So the last video quickly went through the importing of data into Trimble Business Center and the putting of that data into original ground levels layer. When we've done that, the next stage would be to import our design data. So what I'm going to do first of all is go into my View Filter Manager, and I'm going to turn off the created points that the points that we've created that are in this OGL layer. So we'll just toggle these off. We'll then go back to our data from the client, and what we've got here is a set of design data. So I'm just going to import that into Trimble Business Center. I'm reviewing the import off screen. It's jumped onto screen 2. There's nothing important there. And what we can see is a decent design for this particular project. So it looks quite clean, probably cleaner than most data sets that you would get from a client. If I look in the 3D view though, I can see that most of the data is 2D, and I've just been given 3D points for the road centre lines and for the house corners. Now, if that data had been given as 2D and we just had the text, then we could use the same tool that we used in the last exercise to elevate these points using the create points from spot elevations. But then we're left with the same task that we've got here, which is to basically then elevate the lines up to these points. But the first exercise that I would tend to do is to re-layer or organize my layers. So what we've got here on the left-hand side when we look at our View Filter Manager is the layering system from the client. Now we can have a lot of attributes pre-associated with our layers using our templates within Trimble Business Center. So a lot of the time it's easier to move the client's data into our preferred layering system. So to do that, we've got a few options. We'll mention one of them and use the other one. So one of the options is to map layers. So it's actually in the takeoff tab, and we can see there's an option here, map layers. And that, we won't go through it, we'll describe it. So basically that can be used where you know that a particular client uses a particular layering system. Then we can basically save the relationship between their layering system and our layering system, which can be just done by going through the exercise once. That can be saved as a mapping file, and then every time we get data from that client, then we can run that mapping file and it will automatically convert their layering system to our layering system. So the one that I'm going to use is the standardize command. So for this, it's simply a case of me selecting an individual layer. So you can see I've selected this layer and basically choosing which particular layer for my system do I want to use. So I'm going to put this in a one that's called design plots. And then I can basically select the next one, and I can basically say, okay, this is going to be going into design plot levels. And what I can do to make this slightly easier is I can just toggle off the my design group layers or layer group. Then as we change the layerings, then it will basically disappear. So we've got this one here. So if we just click in here, we've got this one that's called fence walls, and I'm just going to put that into one called fences, and I'm going to put this patios into one called design patios. So we can proceed all the way through and basically relayer this drawing into our system, and I'll pause the video to do that. So what we have now, after going through and using the standardize tool, is instead of using the layering system from the client, which we saw here, we've moved to our layering system, which is in our predefined layer groups. So for instance, all the design level information is in here. If I turn on individual layers so we can see, for instance, we've got plot levels. They should actually be plot labels instead of plot levels. And then what we've got here is things like our road levels and our road centerline data, road centerline points. If I look at curb lines, so it's a nicely organized data set. So I always prefer to go through and basically organize my layering. Once we've organized our layering, if we review back where we've got at the moment, we basically have 2D data, but we have some 3D points. So the first thing I'm going to do is basically look at elevating the plots. And what we can do within TBC is if I select any polyline, I can see that I can basically just select the level manually. And if I jump to 3D view and just maybe split the screen for a while, we can see that basically that is elevated based on the text, which is much safer than actually typing it in. If I undo that, if that is a line string, so if I just edit that, so it's a line string, so if I've done any edits at all, I can't do it quite as straightforward, so you can't just click on the level. But what we can do is just go into the CAD tool, change elevation, and again we can just select the level, hit apply, and again it will just edit that elevation. So we can interact with the text on a case by case or an entity by entity basis. But what we can do, which is much nicer, is if I just select the layer called the layer for the plot itself or for the house foundation, and then the center line, there's an option at the top of the filter manager called View Only Layers of Selected Objects. If I select that, then I've actually got some text in here which is mislayered, but I can just ignore that. And I can basically select all of these house foundations, and I can choose to elevate them using the data prep, using the elevate paths command. I'm going to offset the lines very slightly, which you will see why I do that later on. And we can offset the data to the interior. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to leave the existing line work in place, but elevate a second set of lines that's stepped 10 mil inside. And as long as the text is inside each foundation and the lines are fully closed, then this will basically work. So we can just hit apply, and we can basically see that it's read the text in each case and it's elevated the paths. So if I just close that command, and if I select this plot here and look at the properties for that, you can see here it's 29.45, which of course matches the text. So again, we can QC that if required. So what I'm going to do is just relayer the elevated data, and I'm going to put that into a layer called Design Plots Offset In and Elevated. So the next challenge is basically that is giving me my plot levels for the top of the foundation. What we generally have is the garden levels, which is 150 mil below that. Or what I can do is occasionally, because it's not quite so straightforward, we actually have garden levels given to us here at each house corner. And these are actually the 3D points that we have. But as I said before, if they were given as 2D, then we could run the command to elevate them to 3D. So what I want to do is turn off the layer called Design Level Offset In and Elevated. So it's just the plots that are down at 0. And this time I want to use the Elevate Lines command. So the first thing I'll do is I'll select the 2 layers that have the data that I want to use. I'm going to view only the layers of these objects. I'm going to select that data, and I'm going to use the Elevate Lines command. And what I want to do is basically, it's going to be points. We're not searching for text, so we're going to search for points because they are 3D points in this example. And this is how far I'm allowing it to search for a point. And you can see here, if I just take a distance, that is 250 mil. So this is fairly common in the UK, that they basically just throw the level off to one side. And what I'm setting here is a tolerance for how far it's going to look to find that level string. Find the elevation. So because I've selected everything, I can just click in the field points, click in the field lines. So it's found 108 points, it's found 20 lines. If I just hit apply, and if I just jump into 3D view, we can see what it's done. And once again, it looks to have done a pretty good job of just grabbing the appropriate level and elevating it up to 3D. So if I turn off the second layer, which has the top of the foundation, then what essentially we've got is we've got one layer describing the top of the foundation, and a second layer of strings describing the garden level of the foundation. So that's starting to elevate our data. So the next thing that we normally do is start to elevate our roads, and we're just going to do that in the next video.